Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about a little bit of the Joe Rogan controversy. I want to talk a lot more about it, but there's so many clips and things I like to talk about when I talk about this, and it's pretty complicated. And I just don't have everything ready for you today, but I want to talk about it. I want to talk about Stacey Abrams. She's in trouble. And people have been talking about how she was at an event and supposed to be a Black History event with children, and so all the other kids are masked. She got on Governor Kemp and other people for not having mask mandates and so on. So she's there, she's not masked, and all the other kids are masked up, and so people are just like, "Oh, this will make a great campaign photo." And so there's been a lot of talk about that. And so she lashed back out and she's like, "I can't believe you guys would use Black History Month event to do." I'm like, lady, it doesn't matter that you're Black. It doesn't matter that it's Black History Month. It would have been bad in January and it's going to be bad in March when you do things like this. You don't get to just like flaunt your Black card around and play the victim when you did something dumb. When she's the most... the person who's most at risk is the person who's not masked. So if she's not concerned about COVID, perhaps we should unmuzzle the children. So that's why people are talking about it, because these people obviously feel that life isn't as dangerous as they want everyone else to feel like it is. So people have been talking about it, and I don't appreciate her bringing up and invoking Black History Month to get to shoot people down. So we're going to be talking about that today. We're also going to be talking about Canada. They've been going strong with the convoy. If you don't know much about it, I did have a Saturday show with a conservative Canadian, so you guys can check that out. Warning, there was he swore quite a bit, but we did talk quite a bit about what was going on in Canada and the convoy. So they're protesting the lockdowns. They don't want to leave until all the mandates are gone. So right now they're holding strong with the Ottawa police. Is like they were confiscating their fuel last night, based on what people were saying and videos that were coming out. And they also like gave GoFundMe. A lot of people gave money to GoFundMe, and GoFundMe decided to say, "Oh, we're not going to give this money to the truckers, and we're going to redistribute it in the ways that we see fit." Elon Musk spoke out against that. You had Ron DeSantis, who said there was going to be like an investigation into it. Lisa McClain here in my state of Michigan spoke out against it. And so they did reverse their decision and said they would, I guess, refund people. But this is messed up stuff. Very messed up stuff. But the Ottawa police were like, "Yeah, thank you, GoFundMe." So you guys are robbing these poor Canadians who just want to go back to living life, making their own decisions, assessing the risk. And I don't know, people are testing the will of these truckers. Canadians are very polite people normally. At least that's what it said. That's the stereotype. And they've ticked off a lot of people. So they found a way to, they're not burning stuff down like GoFundMe and stuff. We're funding BLM and all those sorts of things. And people were sending money to bail out rioters, protesters, all the kind of stuff. These people are just, they have inflatable bounce houses. And they're just like, "Oh, these people, they're so dangerous. They're so dangerous." Now I can understand being annoyed by the horns if you live in Ottawa. That would be quite annoying. But as AOC would say, protests are supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. So there you go. We'll also be talking about this video that I saw on TikTok. I've been dying to talk about it. This is a big account from a big account, and she has over 300,000 followers. She's a history teacher, white woman, and she's into the diversity, equity, inclusion. And so she spoke about why she thinks white people need to shut up about being upset about Joe Biden announcing that he's going to have a Black Supreme Court justice. And so her reasons are so absurd. And it's such a perfect example of why we don't need diversity, equity, inclusion training. Because she's like, I've had over 80 hours of training in it. Like, yeah, you've been indoctrinated. Thank you for showing clearly in this video how indoctrinated you are. So I've been chomping at the bit to make a video about this. I had a very busy weekend, so I couldn't do like a specific video on it. So I'm like, I'm going to do this live. I'll probably chop that segment out and put it out as well, because it's pretty mind-blowing. I haven't watched it since I think the Saturday morning I saw it. Someone sent it in my inbox. I'm like, it is too early for you to trigger me like this. So I'm excited to show you guys and talk about it. And then I'll put some of it on TikTok, and hopefully they do not swarm me in a crazy manner. But I got to talk about it. It's just a perfect example. It's so good. You guys are going to be like, what the heck, when I show it to you. But it's going to be good stuff. So anyway, before we jump into all those things, the topics of the day, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. I've got some very cool things coming down the line for you guys. I'm talking to some folks to kind of expand Black Teen News, and I'll have some really, really good content that I'll be dropping in the near future. So please make sure that you're going to blacktnews.com, that you're subscribing to like newsletters and stuff, that you're following me on all my social media platforms. I know a lot of you like to watch on Facebook. Make sure you're also subscribed on YouTube. If you have a Twitch account, I'm on Getter, Twitter, Instagram. All my handles are at Black Tea News, with the exception of Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea. Like I said, very excited. I don't want to speak like totally too soon, but we got some stuff in the work that's going to be really, really cool. Really, really cool for you guys. So make sure that you're going to blacktnews.com and checking out the website. Make sure you guys check out different videos that I have. If you didn't see, like when I went to March for Life, please check out that video. Again, I've said this many times, and I'm very grateful to people who sponsor that. If you would like to sponsor blacktnews.com or donate, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate. And I appreciate everything that you guys are willing to do, whether it's $10, $20. There are expenses to, like, the streaming stuff, the website, all those things. So if you would like to help keep Black Teen News going, and as we're expanding and as we're growing, be part of that, you're awesome, you're amazing. But even those of you who are sharing right now, watching it, telling other people to watch Black Teen News, I appreciate all that you guys do. Make sure that you also check out cool merchandise on the website. I dropped this cool Canadian stuff over the weekend, and my Canadian conservative guest gave me his stamp of approval. So you guys can check out those cool hoodies. Very, reminiscent of like Catching Fire. It took me a while to make that little gold leaf. So go ahead and check that out. Get that cool merchandise. Also got other kind of cool stuff like the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt. That's great for Black History Month. Be Better Not Bitter shirt, as well as a cool Frederick Douglass shirt. So make sure that you guys are getting that kind of stuff as well. I do want to thank Brighter Mission Pack. I am in their studio today. And if I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. I'm just using the space, and I am grateful to them for providing the opportunity for me to come here and speak in their nice, amazing studio. So before we jump into things, you guys know I like to start with something funny. I don't have a meme today. I have a video. So Russell Brand, he has a podcast, and I'm so amazed with thinking about like watching Russell Brand's podcast or his videos from time to time, because when he was like doing his stand-up comedian stuff like back in the day, I remember I was so just kind of disgusted with his jokes and the sort of things he would say. He got on the Jonas Brothers and was talking about how he would pay to find any proof that these guys weren't virgins. Like, how dare they do that? And so anyway, I was just like totally against Russell Brand. And so now I find it strange, like politics makes strange bedfellows, but I see clips of him from time to time. He's someone who's spoken up for the convoy and drawn more attention to them. But he made fun of Brian Stelter, and I just thought it was pretty funny, so I wanted to share.
Which sounds great, but not all opinions are created equal.
Now, listen here, Sonny Jim. You're not only making people not trust you, you're making them not trust me.
Who just wing it, who make it up as they go along. And because figures like Rogan are trusted by people that don't trust real newsrooms.
Well, like, why don't people trust me? They trust Rogan, but I'm perfectly trustworthy. Look how loose my tie knot is. Joe Rogan's irresponsible. He took horse maggot medicine the other day. Now tell me, sir, and don't tell me anything other than this, should there be a war? Yes, there should be a war. Interview's done. I'd like to see you do that, Joe Rogan.
So, someone had a pretty funny, well, I guess it wasn't funny. It was just like, you can only pick one or whatever. And they're like, one has to stay. And it was Stelter, Brianna Keller, Jim Acosta, and Don Lemon. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. This is so hard. I really can't stand. If one had to stay, I really can't stand Brianna Keller. I guess she pops up the least out of all those folks, but I really can't stand her. Here's some of her content and the way she's framed a lot of things. I don't know. Maybe it would be Brian Stelter out of those folks, because Don Lemon has said some crazy bonker stuff as of late. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed that, so I thought I would share. So first thing I want to talk about is this Canadian convoy. So they're protesting the mandates in Canada, and they still have some areas and stuff where it's pretty bad. There was a video I shared on my Facebook page and on my TikTok, but of a black man. He has a heart problem, so he has a medical exemption. He cannot get the vaccine. So he said in most places it's been fine, him being able to use that. He could still go to some places, but he couldn't go to the Y to watch his daughter play basketball. And so he was emotional, and he said, if I wasn't with the truckers, I'm with them now. So some people are just like, shut up, just get in formation and let's get back to life. But how at what point, and if you want to take the vaccine, that's fine, but at what point is just rolling over and allowing a tyrannical government immoral? When are you going to stand up? When is enough? Whether you're vaccinated or not, like, you can stand up with these truckers saying that we're not going to keep just rolling over. Especially, it's not like we have a variant right now that the vaccine isn't as effective against. It'd be different if you could take it and there was a guarantee that you weren't going to spread it and you weren't going to get sick. But it's almost like a preventative sort of measure now. So it's just not really fair, and it doesn't make sense. The passports, really, like, you can go to a restaurant and show that you have a passport, but you could be asymptomatic and perhaps spreading it, but someone else who's not vaccinated, who may not have it, can't come into the building. It just doesn't make any sense. When I went to DC for the Right to Life March, I made sure that I took care of my business, like, before I got, came into DC area. I made sure I peed somewhere in Maryland, and I didn't until I left out of DC. Didn't stand there too long. I did my business in this, filming and talking and doing the march, and then I left out of there because there wasn't much for me to do, because I didn't have the credentials that they wanted me to have. But it's funny that you have to have your vaccine passport and show your ID. But if you show your ID to vote, that is racist. That is so racist, because that's the world we live in right now. So GoFundMe, a lot of people raised money, $9 million for this trucker convoy. And there's so many people who brought food for them. There's like these Polish stores that bring all this, like, food for bread and meat and all this for these guys. And people have been very, very generous toward the effort. So people raised on GoFundMe $9 million. And so GoFundMe was like, you know what, we don't like this cause, so we're going to redistribute it to causes that we think are better. So how would you feel giving to something and then they're like, no, we're just gonna put it elsewhere? Would you feel a little robbed? Would you feel a little gypped? So you had people like Elon Musk who raised a big stink about it. And so he spoke out against it. Ron DeSantis spoke out against it, said he was going to investigate. You had Lisa McClain. She's from Michigan. She's a congresswoman from Michigan. She spoke out against it. And so you have these big tech corporations who make these huge statements. And if you're a private company, that's one thing, but you got to be honest to your users. You can be honest to your users. And also apply rules evenly. Now, if you're going to say we are 100% political and we will not treat you fairly, That should be like a big bold letters in the front of your website, I think. But to think that you would give this money for this cause and they can be like, you know what, we don't like it and we're going to put it elsewhere into stuff that we think is a good cause. That's weird. If you really think causes or groups or whatever that are causing disruptions or damage or whatever, which the Keys Canadians are like the nicest little protesters from some of the stuff. Let me just show you a little bit. It's gonna be a little loud, so I'll turn down the audio, so the horns aren't blaring too loud. But they're just like having a good time. We got some like techno music going on there, and here's like another one. So dangerous. The rebel scum. Just like waving their flags. They have bounce houses there. They put up like minion bounce houses and all this other stuff. It's not like the BLM riots. And not all BLM demonstrations were violent. I'm not saying that, but there was enough that I would not have wanted to be associated with that in the least bit. Absolutely not. And people still talk about like the Kyle Rittenhouse case and what happened to Kenosha. Like they went there these are Black Lives Matter protesters. I'm like, really? Rosenbaum, who threatened to kill him and was like insane and like a child predator. You think he went there to protest for Black lives? I don't think that's what happened. We had a pretty detailed episode about the Kyle Rittenhouse case and showing a lot of the chaos that was going around that time. And they're like, well, he shouldn't have been there defending the businesses and stuff, or that wasn't his business to defend. There were people there who were just trying to defend their businesses, and people had an attitude about it, and they were ready to attack them too. So people were just violent. They didn't like the fact that people were trying to tell them that you can't go and riot and destroy stuff and burn stuff. That's why they're attacking people. So the fact that GoFundMe and other people be willing to fund something like that, but they're not willing to fund truckers or allow people to fund, because they're not funding them. They're just like a conduit for which the money flows. They're not willing to allow that to happen, but they are willing to be gung-ho about BLM. It doesn't make a lot of, it does make sense. They're just politically biased, and they're willing to side with the tyrants, the tyrannical sort of overlords. But people who want to stand up and say, you know what, I would appreciate my rights now. Like we've had a go at this for a minute. You guys like trying to keep me in this box here, but I've just had enough. I want to get back to like living my life, especially when you people break these rules all the time, and we'll get to that with Stacey Abrams. So why can't we go back to living our lives? And it would do something and mean something if the measures that they were still trying to push was going to have a significant outcome and survival rates. Not the case though. At least not some of these mandates, especially like the testing ones and the passports. So it's not worth your liberty. It's not worth your liberty. So I appreciate these Canadians standing up. Let me show you this pretty funny video. There's a protester who pretended to get hit by a car. It's just really pathetic.
He's just pretending.
Oh my goodness.
He's pretending.
I'm just gonna play it one more time.
He's just pretending.
Oh my goodness.
He's pretending.
By the way, they got back up and started complaining about people being maskless. So they're definitely okay. But people are definitely dramatic. And actually there were radicalized people who were against the convoy who actually did like plow into protesters. So that's not being really talked about either. that's not really being talked about. And so after this GoFundMe thing, the Ottawa police actually were happy. They said, "We want to thank GoFundMe for listening to our concerns as a city and police service. The decision to withhold funding for these unlawful demonstrations is an important step, and we can all call on crowdfunding sites to follow." That is bonkers. That is bonkers. Just insane. And so last night they actually, a video started coming out of the police actually taking away the fuel, confiscating the fuel of these drivers.
So, in fact, yes, they are taking fuel right away from people as they attempt to fuel their vehicles. And people are surrounding the police, even though the police are actually being extremely calm and cool about kind of everything, except for they're taking fuel, I guess. But other than that, they're being pretty respectful to everyone, considering they just got surrounded in like 2 seconds.
That's pretty crazy. Just taking their fuel. So it was probably pretty cold for some of these drivers last night, but I commend them. If they're truly still trying to be there until the lockdowns end, and perhaps, this is like, as I don't know how much crazier they'll get. Will they go in and just start arresting everyone? I don't know about that. I don't know how long Trudeau is going to play the game and how long they really want to push these things. But I commend the Canadians for standing up. We did have like gridlock protests early on, and that started like here in Michigan, from what I can recall. Started here in Michigan, and then people started doing it other places across the country. And man, there were some like local police departments that would speak up out against it in certain places. In Michigan, I feel like a lot of the police were like, most of this stuff is dumb, guys. We have other things to worry about, so we're not going to just follow every time the governor has a dumb order. So and there was quite a few like sheriffs that were like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm not doing that." But in other places in the country, there were definitely, police departments issuing stuff that was anti-freedom, and people were just trying to demonstrate their rights to peacefully protest. We had a lot of protests in 2020 that were not peaceful, and people still to this day will refer to it as in that light, in that manner, knowing that we have so much footage, and a lot of that stuff maybe you haven't seen unless you've been online a lot, because maybe they'd play some of it on Fox, but they wouldn't play like a lot of that stuff on like CNN and other networks that people really watch. And well, really is a strong word, but in the height of like Trumpness, they got much better ratings. It's different than it is today. They lost a huge portion, more than a majority of their audience after Trump being out of office. They would love if he actually ran again, I'm sure. But I commend the Canadians. So keep standing strong, guys. Really appreciate it. Someone said, "I'm honestly still surprised Canadians are standing up." I hope it lasts, and I hope they can get their government to listen to what they have to say. It is still funny in a way, just seeing how polite they are. They're like, "Oh, the police are very polite, though they are confiscating everything," and even they're very calm. So like, this just seems so stereotypical Canadian to me. But kudos to you guys. So I want to move on to the dear Governor Stacey Abrams, someone who doesn't know how to take an L, and she still doesn't know how to take her L. So she got into some hot water, and now it's being responded like the Republicans are pouncing, the Republicans are saying this, and the Republicans are upset. It's like, why instead of like rephrasing it like Republicans are upset, why don't you just phrase it like Stacey Abrams did a bad thing? Why don't we phrase it like that? It seems like that would be the honest way to do it. So anyway, she was at this event with these children, and you can see they're all masked. So people are pointing out that stuff like this would be a great ad. As a matter of fact, someone did cut an ad with a bunch of children being masked and showing like different people at award shows and so on, where they get to be unmasked and the kids have to wear masks. So I think that was an ad that someone showed it on CNN, and they comment about it like they were so like, I don't know, upset and offended about it. I'm like, but that's a good ad. That's a good ad because people don't understand. Especially, there's parents who are like scared to death. Still, don't get me wrong, but there's other parents who have had enough of this anyway. And knowing that, and some of these kids are vaccinated for the older age group and stuff, but a lot of parents have had enough. So this would make a great ad. And so with this, by the way, Alyssa Slotkin, this came out today, and she tweeted that this wasn't kids, though. She's at an event, another successful snow boots on the ground event in Owasso. Thank you to everyone who came out despite the frigid temperatures. My selfie skills also seem to be improving, so my team actually let me post this one. So, yeah, so she's wearing a mask. I'm not wearing a mask at this event where everyone else is masked. So, I don't understand why she wouldn't still be wearing wearing the mask for the selfie. I was at an event, I guess maybe I don't remember if this is 2020 or 2021, maybe early. And someone who was a pretty good local headliner, and they were like, I have to make sure I'm wearing a mask and social distancing in the pictures. They are not playing around with us. So I don't understand why they're still not having this energy if you're still in places where all these people are still being masked and you want to convey that. Especially for a picture. It's not like we're not going to know it's Alyssa Slotkin because she's taking the selfie and she's the one posting it. So I just thought that was interesting because someone, I think it was Stephen Miller, tweeted out and they're like, here's another ad. Like they just keep coming. But this Stacey Abrams ad is something else. It's not an ad yet. I'm sure it will be. And I'm sure it will be an ad because she's talked about Governor Kemp and his anti-mask sort of policies. And she's been for them. And so here she is not masked. And you could say, well, Stacey's vaccinated. I'm assuming that. I don't 100% know that, but I'm assuming that she is. And she can do what she wants. And the kids are a different story. Okay, but here's the thing. She is morbidly obese. She's morbidly obese. She's not that old, but she's older than me, I think. I'm pretty sure. And she's morbidly obese. I feel like I can say that as a fellow fat woman. She's morbidly obese. She is in far greater risk of COVID than every other person in here that I can see. Except maybe that person in the back there. But at least far greater risk than all these kids here. Okay? Far greater risk. So if that is the case, why is it that she feels secure enough to not wear that mask, even for a picture? Again, it's not like we're not going to know it was her. She's the one who posted it to her Twitter page. And by the way, and there's tons of photos of politicians with masks on because they were trying to encourage people to mask. So it's not like there wasn't this precedent of all these people wearing masks before still doing all these pictures. Joe Biden has a ton of pictures, masks. As a matter of fact, that was there was a 9/11 ceremony with Biden was there, Bush was there, Obama was there, and I think they all like put on masks for a picture before that. Like, so people are aware of the psychology of a Fauci argued with Rand Paul about it. He's like, why? Rand Paul's like, why are you wearing a mask? You're vaccinated. I have natural immunity because I got infected. So I have, the antibodies and stuff. Why are you still wearing a mask? This is a charade. He's like, it's not a charade. It's not a charade. I hate when you say that, Rand Paul, blah, blah, blah. And then when Biden decided to shift the policy on masks and be like, okay, we can stop wearing them, Fauci goes on like CNN or MSNBC, all these other places, and he's like, well, I wanted to wear the mask before because people would see me with the mask, and I wanted to be a good example. But now we're not wearing the mask, so I cannot wear the mask. So it's theater. So Rand Paul was right. It's theater. You lied to Rand Paul, and you were trying to run a game on everybody else. And I can understand optics. I absolutely can. And when people complain about Trump not wearing a mask, who was tested all the time, and we know masks don't work, so anyway, he could be mad about it or not mad about it, but he was trying to portray that we can't get back to normal life and maybe an image of strength or whatever optics that he had. You can understand he had a different approach to optics, and Biden has a different approach to optics. Optics is always a thing. So this is weird to me. This is strange to me. Because the optics of this says rules for me, but we're going to muzzle your kids. Because she's in far greater danger than all these children. Far greater danger. And you know what? I've gone through the numbers many times with you guys on the show about the likelihoods of COVID. This is from older CDC numbers, but if you're ages 1 to 4, you're more likely to die of drowning, car accidents, homicide, cancer, cardiovascular disease, flu, pneumonia, suffocation. 5 to 14, pretty much the same thing, except you're pretty much tied with suffocation. The chances of anyone in the age bracket in that room dying of COVID is very, 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 very rare. Very rare. So, and you could say, well, she's vaccinated, and those kids aren't necessarily vaccinated, so they're just concerned. So, but why isn't she masked? All those other adults are masked because I guess they're concerned about catching it from these kids or spreading it to these kids or spreading it to each other. But why isn't she masked? So this is a really bad optics play. So, of course, Republicans were talking about it, and Republicans were pouncing, as they say. The media always likes to say Republicans are pouncing. And I get that. I understand that. But why are they just letting her get away with her dumb comment? So she issued a statement, and she says, it's shameful that our opponents are using Black History Month reading event for Georgia children for the false political attack, and it's pitiful and predictable that our opponents continue to look for opportunities to distract from their failed records when it comes to protecting public health during the pandemic. What does Black History Month got to do with anything? It's a shame they would use a Black History Month event. It ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Why'd you go to these children and try to infect yourself and everybody else on Black History Month, huh? Why'd you do that, Stacey Abrams? Because you're not really concerned. There was a picture of Obama and kind of skulking in the background with his arms folded. And he's looking around, and he's unmasked while all these like construction workers and people in Hawaii are working on his like new home or whatever. And like, this is reality. And in Hawaii, I don't know how bad the restrictions are right now, but they've always been pretty bad. But everybody else is wearing masks. Obama's not. And Obama had a birthday party, and he was dancing maskless. Because they don't really care. They're not concerned about it. They know it's a game. They're playing a game on you. As Rand Paul said, it's theater. And Fauci would be like, it's not theater. It just totally is theater. And they came back and admitted it to you at one point in time. So I just think it's funny. And I'm sure this will come up in campaign ads. But honey child, just because you are a Black woman and it is Black History Month does not give you a pass to act like a dang fool. Give you a pass to act like a dang fool. You can't just invoke a black card to try to get out of everything. And people who fall for that, just stop. Just stop. I mean, I guess it could have been just because it was a Black History Month reading event, you should have been on your best behavior instead of distracting and making the headlines by not wearing mask. But she just doesn't care. So it's amazing that someone taking this picture didn't realize that the optics of this. There's a video of AOC sitting among all these children, like on the steps in DC, and then she puts on her mask for the picture. Of course, that's theater, but at least she had enough sense to put on the mask. And the people trash talked her when she went down to Florida and was maskless, hanging out with her boyfriend with her feet all out and with the sandals, and people were talking about them. And she's like, "Oh, these Republicans, they just want to date me so hard." Which was, of course, ridiculous. And she leans to the sexism thing. And Stacey Abrams here is trying to pull out the black card thing. But I'm sorry, sweetheart, we're just not going to do that. You look like a darn fool. And Kemp is going to have some ads. I know there's some people who don't want him to run again. But he is the current governor. He's probably going to run for re-election, and just please go ahead and support him, because you do not want this woman to win. And she's got a lot of support. She's got a lot of backing. She can raise a lot of money. Of course, she never really conceded the last election, which I'm told is a threat to our democracy, but that's the kind of woman Stacey Abrams is. But again, can't use Black History Month to make an excuse for you doing a darn foolish thing. And I don't know what's wrong with her staff, and I don't know why they would make pictures like this, but man, it's an ad. It is absolutely an ad. So really quickly, I want to talk about the Joe Rogan situation. I want to go into more depth about it later. But Joe Rogan is someone there over the weekend. There's been this coordinated effort to go after Joe Rogan. And Ben Shapiro claims that people are really mad at him once he said he wouldn't vote for, he'd vote for maybe Trump over Biden. And he said he was like a dying flashlight in the woods. Like, is he going to make it? Is it not? Which was like an amazing analogy. Okay. But Joe Rogan is not someone on the right. And he has a range of different issues, and he has a range of different hosts. Someone tried to put out a list of like his hosts, his liberal hosts versus like right-wing hosts. And it's amazing who got put on the right-wing list. They put Tim Pool on there. They put Tulsi Gabbard on there. So obviously you have people who are criticizing who are not looking at things at an objective lens at all. Because Tim Pool isn't on the right. There's a lot of people on the right who like to listen to him. And Tulsi Gabbard's, she's not crazy, but she still has some pretty left views. She wouldn't be my first pick in a Republican primary. Absolutely not. So, and who knows, she could switch one day, but she's still not on the right. She did run in the Democrat primary as early as, the last election that they had. So it's amazing what they're doing as they come after Joe. So of course they were, I'm sure they were upset about the election thing, and he has such a huge audience, and he doesn't kowtow to them. But I think the really, really huge thing that they're upset about is that he will not just conform to the dogma of the vaccine stuff and the mandates. And he tells people that, he's not against it. You should look at your risk and go ahead and do it. If you want to, but he's against like the mandates, or he just wants to ask questions. He just really wants to ask questions. And so he had Gupta from CNN on and like questioned them, because they were telling people that he was taking horse dewormer and trying to make it just seem like he's this crazy wild man. But he's just a guy who asks questions. Everybody knows Joe Rogan's not a doctor, but he had Robert Malone on, and they were really mad about that. And then they did try to fact check Malone, and in the fact checks are like, there's no such thing as mass formation psychosis, and people were really mad that he brought that up. And I got a video that was taken down on TikTok for just talking about that, and the fact checkers that they had in their articles where they're fact checking him, they have written or promoted pieces about how psychology and human behavior psychology can help to get people to conform and comply with COVID measures. And they realize that forming everything as you have to do it for the collective rather than you have to do this for your own benefit gets more people involved and willing to comply than if you were doing it for yourself. So I'm sure that's why you hear Biden say stuff like, this is about your freedom or your personal choice, Or you hear Kamala Harris talking about that, do this for your neighbor, love your neighbor. And you have on those things were extreme anyway, but you have all these people saying, do it or you're going to kill grandma. So people realize the more people are thinking as a collective rather than doing it for themselves and what's the best decision for themselves, they will get more people to comply. So to me, it was just like the people are saying it doesn't exist, but while they're clearly like doing it at the same time. And so I did a TikTok about it. TikTok took that down for not false information. They took it down for like integrity. And I was looking through like what could they mean by this? And sometimes like under that stuff, it's like, oh, you're posing as someone who's not you, or you're something like that. I'm like, well, that's not true. And it's like, well, you're presenting information that could be harmful. I'm like, there's nothing harmful in that. Nothing harmful in it. So people don't like you going against the narrative. So if you recall, some time ago, Nicki Minaj was the person who was being attacked by people like Joy Reid and so on, and the White House is trying to talk to her so they can have Dr. Fauci directly talk to her and all this kind of other stuff because they wanted her to get on board. And she didn't even say that she wouldn't get vaccinated. As a matter of fact, Nicki Minaj said she probably would get vaccinated because she wants to go on tour again. But she was telling people to pray about it, talk about it, and people say, oh, she's misusing her platform. She was having, if you read her tweets, which we talked about Nicki Minaj like a whole week. She was having a conversation with her fans that happened to be on social media, okay? But she's not a doctor, but saying, hey, it's your decision, you need to pray about it, and just, what, and she's even asking questions like, which is the best vaccine? People don't want you even asking questions, and they resent people who have influence, not just stepping in line. Charlemagne once talked about how he thought it was weird how all these people really wanted them to get information to get in line with this. So he's like, I didn't really want to do it. He's like, because you could have all these other sort of issues going on and the White House and all these people won't like do a thing about it. But with this, they want everybody to like get in line about this. And he just thought it was weird. He just thought it was weird. But they really resent people who will not just push it. So I think that Malone interview was something they really resented, were really upset about. So you had people digging in Joe Rogan's past archives, which he's been in the public eye for a long time. He's a comedian. And so they found some clips of him saying, now he did make a Planet of the Apes joke. That's obviously a racist joke. But he said the N-word, they did a compilation video, but he's not calling someone an N-word. He's like quoting the N-word, talking about a song lyric and all these other kind of stuff. So people want to cancel him over that. And people have retaliated by well, if context doesn't matter, there's this compilation of like the Young Turks using the N-word a lot. And I know there's like context to that, but I'm like, why are people saying, why don't they just say the N-word? Why do they feel like they have to just blurt it out? Is it because they want to shock people about sort of how horrible it is? So they want to say it? Like, if you don't think people should say it, then why are you like, I don't know, just hard saying it? So it's even weird, like kind of watching the compilation of like the Young Turks. I'm like, what? And why did they say it so many times? Their news show. So there's one with the Young Turks, and then people brought up a video of Joe Biden saying it. And he was quoting something, but again, he could have said, he just could have said the N-word, just censored it out that sort of way. But he went ahead and said it. But you can say, well, context matters. Yeah, and so context should matter with Joe Rogan. But people are really, really, really quick to try to cancel him on that. The Rock, high-fived him for his statement when he came out and made a statement about the COVID misinformation when Joe Rogan addressed that. And then people came for The Rock because he sort of complimented Joe Rogan. And then he like disowned Rogan. And then people started posting old videos of The Rock, who, was a wrestler. So of course there's like some strong language and things that have come from The Rock, including like calling people trannies and transvestites and all this other kind of stuff. So people are coming for The Rock, but not like they're coming for Rogan, but just kind of like are we going to apply the same standard or not? So Spotify has removed over 100 episodes of Joe Rogan's show, and they've talked to their staff like, we don't support that kind of stuff, but he's still a person on Spotify that doesn't represent our company and stuff. And Spotify just should have said from the beginning of all this that that their platform, they have all kind of voices on Spotify, and they are a streaming platform, and they don't have to be for everyone who's on their streaming platform, because I'm sure they have a lot of artists dropping the N-word. I'd have to guess. I don't really listen to Spotify for music. I don't, the few times I will listen to Spotify is probably for a podcast. So I just have to guess, since it's a music streaming platform, that a lot of people who are like, oh, fainting, listen to music with the N-word in it all the time. If you don't want it to be mainstream, stop using it. Stop using it. And you can say, well, it's only supposed to be for specific people. If it's so awful, stop using it. Stop promoting it. Stop putting it out there. Got a lot of thoughts about all this stuff, but like I said, I'm gonna table it, the full kind of thought process, for perhaps tomorrow. But I don't like how they're coming for Joe. And you know what, Joe? Tim Pool said he needs to, like, whoever his PR crisis people are, they kind of need to like rethink this and not apologize. And he needs to double down and just be like, you know what, I'm not apologizing. And you know what, I talked to my sister came to me Saturday morning and or might have been yesterday morning. I think she did come to me Saturday morning about something else. And then Sunday morning, she's like, did you see this thing about Rogan? And so she said he's a comedian. I wouldn't expect any comedian over 30 to have not used it, honestly. And I think that's just the truth. And you could say, well, we live in a different society and we know better and we're a little more sensitive and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But if you keep digging in everybody's past like they're doing with The Rock, man, they brought up a Howard Stern video of him making fun of Ted Danson and Whoopi Goldberg, and he was just dropping N-word left and right. This is a very destructive path we are going down. And it's only gonna get worse. It's only gonna get worse. But in the case of like the Whoopi Goldberg situation, with like The View and how other people have been canceled, I wrote an article that did pretty well, at least for my site, about how ABC canceled other people. People now want like mutually assured destruction. There's some people like, no, free speech. But Ben Shapiro, who would normally be free speech, is like, either we're going to apply the rules the same, or we need to apply some grace to people. So you cannot just decide that you're going to destroy your enemies and leave it at that and want grace for yourself. That's not how our society is going to exist. It's obviously totally unfair. So, if people want to do that with Rogan, there's a lot of stuff I'm sure backstory we can do, especially if we're canceling comedians. Again, Joe Rogan is not a CNN analyst. He's not a journalist. He's not a journalist. And if you want to talk about racist, homophobic kind of stuff that journalists have said, you go back to Joy Reid. She had some stuff that she claimed that she was hacked over posting on a blog. But just a piece of advice to people: don't apologize. Absolutely don't apologize. So I hope this is the end of like the Spotify thing, but the fact that there's blood in the water, I don't think so. I don't think so. But Godspeed to Joe Rogan again. I got a lot more things and thoughts and clips I'd like to go through with you guys, but I'm gonna do that on a different day. I really would like to get to this video. Hopefully it plays fine.
A TikTok history teacher here. I want to talk for a second about.
Okay, before I get into this is a big TikToker who has over 300,000 views. And so someone sent me this Saturday morning, and I couldn't go through it and reply the way that I wanted to, because I had a busy weekend. And so I'm glad I can go through this with you guys, but this is going to totally demonstrate why diversity, equity, inclusion inclusion, philosophy, training is just garbage because she's a history teacher, and she's studied all this stuff, and she's going to demonstrate why it's garbage, and I will walk through it with you together. So let's go.
Hey, TikTok history teacher here. I want to talk for a second about conversations I'm hearing over Joe Biden's promise to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. And I might get myself in trouble, but I think it's really important that we talk about this. And by we, I want to be really clear. I mean mostly white people, because white people are the only people that I hear complaining or feeling uncomfortable about this.
Okay, so I just want to say that's not true. I'm sure there's a lot more white people talking about this, but there are people speaking out against this other than white people. And I've heard black conservatives talk about it. I've heard, Ted Cruz talk about it and some other people. So it's not just white people talking about it, but just because you're white doesn't mean your opinion's not valid. Okay. Just because you're white doesn't mean your opinion is not valid on such things. Okay. Let's go on.
At all. Like, we seem to have this idea that explicitly mentioning someone's race or saying, like, I think we should have a insert race here person on the Supreme Court is implicitly racist. It's not, and let me tell you why. And first off, I'm not a black woman, and so I'm gonna, put in the comments a lot of creators that you should go follow who are probably gonna have way more powerful and important and useful commentary on this topic. I will say, though, that I think I'm uniquely positioned because I am a white teacher, a white educator who has over a decade of experience talking to mostly, let's be honest, other white kids about race and about identity and about these sort of topics.
Okay, so she's got a long experience talking about this stuff, and that's going to include hours and hours of this diversity, equity, inclusion training. So you see she's very biased in her beliefs, and she's teaching a lot of kids out there, and I guess particularly a lot of white kids. So FYI, these are the kind of people who are indoctrinating your children, and you might be like, she hasn't said anything crazy yet. Let's just wait, guys.
I also am one of our school's co-coordinators for diversity, equity, inclusion, along with a woman of color, and we've gone through like an 80-hour, national training to be able to talk to people about issues of race and identity. Anyway, all that being said, let's talk about why reverse racism isn't real.
It's just racism. Reverse racism, that's like, when white people feel they're being discriminated against because of racism or whatever, and you can say, well, white people can't experience racism because they'll say that there's a power structure that has to be associated with racism. So it's just racism. And I'm sorry, you can't just be excluded from being racist because you're black and you don't have the institutional power. That's what they'll say. That's so convenient, by the way. It's just so utterly convenient that black people can't be racist. And I guess every other minority can't be racist. It's just exclusively the white people that can be racist. That's crazy. And reverse racism is a term, but really, she's correct. It's not really. It's just plain old, good old fashioned racism. Okay. Let's keep going.
So there's this kind of conversation going around about how explicitly saying I'm going to nominate a black person or a black woman to the Supreme Court is racist because it's excluding other races. Joe Biden is basically saying, I'm not even going to consider anyone who's not black.
And that is racist. Okay? It'd be different if it was like, we're doing a movie about Martin Luther King and we are only going to consider black people. Okay, that's like a role that's like fitted for that. Okay, if you're talking about like who's going to be on the Supreme Court, that shouldn't be based on your race. And I know that when people do fill in certain jobs, sometimes they think about having a more diverse crew or whatever. But not everybody will announce that. And I'm not even saying that's right at all. But this dude flat out announced it. But it's not only discriminatory against white people. Okay? What about all the other minorities that it discriminates against? What about Asians? What about Latinos? It's not just the white people getting the shaft here. That's what's crazy about it. Let's go on.
And here's why I don't think that's actually a problem, but it's definitely not reverse racism. One, because he's trying to right a historic wrong.
Let's go back in time. I wish I had this queued up. Let's go back in time and just think about, there's a black person on the Supreme Court right now, isn't there? Oh yeah, his name is Clarence Thomas. Oh yeah, Joe Biden treated him like trash. Oh yeah, they did the high-tech lynching against him. If you've never seen like him talk about Biden and the high-tech lynching and how, you know, he was the uppity one who like stepped out of line, that is quite a powerful speech from Clarence Thomas, and you should go watch it. But if we're looking at this injustice, Joe Biden is the one who committed the injustice against Clarence Thomas. Now, if you're saying that we need to kneecap every other race and be discriminatory against whites, Hispanics, and Asians in order to get this black woman on the Supreme Court, what we do have a black person on the Supreme Court, and liberals do not care about him. They talk about race, but they do not hold it in such high regard. If you do not fit the ideology that they want, then your race isn't as important. There's so many people who are so racist toward me every day because I am a black conservative. And then, so I'll move on to this next point in a second. But we have a black person on the Supreme Court. There's only 9 justices, okay? There's a black person on the court. There's a black person on the court, and there's 2 women on the court. So if you think it's just impossible for a black woman to get on the Supreme Court, if you think that is impossible, that's a little crazy. And if you really need Joe Biden at this point in time, after we have a black VP, well, she's mixed with other stuff too, but we have Kamala Harris, person of color, who is the vice president of the United States, and you have Obama, who was the president before Donald Trump was. You've seen people like Condoleezza, Colin Powell, who I remember the Bush years, people like, Bush is so racist. And like, what do you mean? There's Colin Powell, there's Condoleezza, like, he's still a racist. And they would disregard them all the time. But Colin Powell was cool when he said, you know, he liked Obama and stuff. If you think that you really, 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 really need this black woman nominated to the Supreme Court because that will be able to be like, oh, I can make all my dreams come true because someone else did it first, there's a lot of other people you're not looking toward. So I can understand people feeling that he needs to solve this great injustice, but here's the problem with equality versus equity, because you're trying to rig the game, I suppose, and you're willing to be discriminatory against other races. And it's not just white people. What about Hispanics? What about Asians? All these other people who would be, you know, well qualified for the position. What about other men of color? What about black men? Maybe there's another black man who'll be well suited for this role. You're excluding all those people to be racist and sexist. And you're saying, well, you're trying to solve this problem. That's not progressive, in my opinion. That's regressive. So you're willing to chop off everyone off the knees in order to build your Frankenstein monster of equity. That's not a good thing, in my opinion. Maybe you think it's a good thing to show discrimination to solve injustice. I don't think that's a good thing in 2022. But hey, she's a white history teacher who's had a lot of training, so maybe she knows better.
I mean, he's also trying to like get black voters and stuff, but
Whoa. Wait a minute. We just not about to speed past there. He's also trying to get black voters. Hold up. You acknowledge. You should throw that out there. You just acknowledged that Joe Biden is doing it to emotionally manipulate black people. He is picking a black woman to emotionally manipulate voters. That's disgusting. You're like, oh, he's just doing, and you can say, well, a lot of people do things to get votes. That's true, but he has so little respect. He could have just done it. He could have just had his list of nominees that were all kind of diverse and picked the black woman, and people were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is so historic. But no, he announced, I will only consider a black woman. Cheapened it, really. No, and you full well know it's to manipulate people. And some people are dumb enough and emotional enough to be like, yes, thank you, Joe Biden. That was enough to buy my vote. That was enough to buy my loyalty. That's crazy. That is nothing to take lightly. That was nothing to take lightly. And you know what? People have had very destructive policies in the past and bought black votes before. It's not nothing new from the Democrat side, buying votes. And again, you can say, well, people do that all the time. And you can say, well, Trump tried to do the platinum plan and all the other stuff. Yeah, he did a bunch of good stuff. Joe Biden has been a notoriously bad politician. He's a very bad president right now. He's a very bad president. And that's, you know, I think that's subjective, I suppose. I think it's pretty objective, but that's a subjective opinion. But even people who on TikTok and other places who are like, well, Biden's not great, but he's better than Trump. So you agree he's not great. At least we can agree on that. At least we can agree on that. That is not something to take lightly. And you know what? Joe Biden has been lying his whole entire career for as far as he's run for president about his participation in the civil rights movement. That's not something he just lied about like way back when. That's something he lies about even recently. He recently made a remark about getting arrested or something, like the throwaway sort of line, and people kind of chuckled and stuff. That wasn't true. On the campaign trail, he was repeating stuff. Before, when he was the vice president, he would lie to black voters in churches about participating in the civil rights movement. That's disgusting. That's super disgusting and offensive. This is a person who said, you're not black if you don't vote for me. You can say, well, that was a joke. Why do you have the audacity to say such a thing? People talk about Joe Rogan right now. That is extraordinarily offensive. You are not black if you even commit the thought crime of not voting for me. If you even think about it, if you have trouble thinking about it, coming to the conclusion, me, Joe Biden, who did things that are controversial to a lot of the black community, like the 1994 crime bill, if you don't vote for me, how are we going to save the soul of the nation? Me, the person who lies about participating in the civil rights movement, who committed the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas. And the last thing I want to say before I move on from this point, I guess it's kind of a new point, but when you are picking someone who is black, how are you guys defining what's black? Because Nicole Hannah-Jones from the 1619 Project said there's a difference between being ethnically black and being politically black. You have Michael Eric Dyson, who talks about someone like Winsome Sears, who has an incredible story, who's an incredible woman, and will say a black face, a black mouth is moving, but white supremacist ideas are coming through. And he said that about a whole bunch of different other people. It's not even an original thought from him. Okay? So what kind of black is the real black to you people? And if it's not just purely just being black, then what does it matter? Is it just your idea of blackness? Because how can they celebrate this new person who's Joe Biden's going to pick while not liking Clarence Thomas? And I can understand, well, you don't like Clarence Thomas because you don't like his rulings, you don't like his pieces that he writes, you don't like his ideology, and I can respect that opinion. I can respect that. But if we're going to judge people based off of their opinions, then their race shouldn't matter. Let's go on.
He's also trying to right a historic wrong. He is taking a historically marginalized group and trying to affirm their existence in our country and make sure that they have representation in all the branches of government.
Oh, okay. The Supreme Court, what they're supposed to represent is a law. They're supposed to rule on, is this constitutional, is this not constitutional? I don't need your opinion on a court ruling as a black woman. I don't need your opinion on a court to give your court ruling as a Hispanic person. I don't need your court ruling as an Asian person. I don't need your court ruling as a man, as a woman. What does the law say? Period. What does the law say? Is it constitutional? If you want to elect people because you think it's important that they represent you, guess what? You can elect that person to Congress because they're supposed to elect the people. Represent the people. Or you can even elect them to the Senate. The Senate is supposed to represent the state. But the Supreme Court, it's not supposed to be political like that. That's why you have their lifetime appointments and the president picks them. They appoint them. And then the Senate goes through the confirmation process. It is not supposed to be political, and I understand that it is extraordinarily political right now, and has been for some time. Actually, there's a particular person who made it super political, who kind of like shifted the dynamics of it. I think that person's name was Joe Biden. So, saying, hey, we need to make sure that the courts look like America. Again, you have a black person on the Supreme Court and you have women on the Supreme Court. It's not weird that there's white people on the Supreme Court. America has a lot of white people still in it. And you can say, well, throughout the years, there's all these people who haven't been appointed. Yeah, I acknowledge that there's been some big changes in our nation. But again, being discriminatory isn't a way to solve racism. And Joe Biden announcing it is sure a trash move, because he wants his kudos and he wants them before it, but he doesn't mind letting you know that he thinks you're a sucker and he's going to pander to you and he expects you to get in line. That's the thing that ticked my sister off. My sister who's right underneath me. She was so mad when he said the "you ain't black" comment, because she said Joe Biden is saying, I own you Negroes. And I know it. That was so offensive. And you can say he was joking. Joe Biden wasn't joking about nothing. Nothing.
So reverse racism isn't real, because racism, just like by its definition, truly like the academic definition, it's prejudice that's backed by institutional power.
Okay, so again, I hate this definition. It is how can you just twist this so much? And even in this sense, this particular sense right here, where you have the president of the United States discriminating against every other race and gender. I mean, there's only two, but besides the black woman, how is that not backed by an institutional power? How? He's the president. So if he's being prejudiced, he obviously is backed by an institutional power called the executive branch. How is that not racism to a T? By even your dumb, silly academic standard.
What that means is that you can have a person of color who is prejudiced against me because I'm white, and that sucks. I'm not saying that's okay, but it's not racism, because in our country, because of the color of my skin, am backed and supported by more institutions than that person of color is. So let's take.
I don't think that's higher than the office of the president, but this white guilt is so dumb and crazy, man. I can't, just groveling nonsense. It's ridiculous. And she says it sucks if you treat me bad. It's still just racism. It's still just genuine racism. And I know not too long ago a white woman went to the dictionary and was like, "Oh, will you please change this definition? Will you please change this definition?" You guys are so ridiculous. I'm working on a book about some of this silly stuff that white women like her think and say. It's going to be good.
An example, right? Let's take, if I'm sitting in a parking lot right now, right? Let's say a person of color, like a black woman.
Oh my gosh. This is the craziest part, guys. This is the craziest part. Like, ears up. So you're sitting in a parking lot, okay?
Woman saw me, thought I was suspicious looking, and called the cops. Do we really think that anything bad is really going to happen to me, except that maybe it'll like take some time out of my day? But on the flip side, if I, a white woman, saw a black woman sitting in her car and I called the cops, there's a pretty good likelihood that something really bad is going to happen to that black woman. And that.
I told my sister about this, and she immediately said, "That's racist. That's racist. She's racist. She's racist." So we've established you're sitting in a parking lot, and please don't call the police on people unless you think they're in danger or trouble, or there's really something suspicious going on. Don't just bother people, okay? So let's get out that the way. But whatever her definition of suspicious is, there's someone suspicious. There's a black woman looking at a white woman. Something suspicious is happening. She calls the cops, and she says nothing's probably going to happen to that woman. Okay, okay, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But she's like, but if I'm a white woman and I call the cops on a black woman, then she's probably, something bad is probably going to happen. She's probably have a bad day. She's probably going to be pulled into questioning. That is a lot of assuming right there. And I don't know how many times she's called the police in her life, but that is crazy. That is crazy. My sister called the police because she saw, like, in the neighborhood, there was some arguing going on, and there was a black woman arguing with her boyfriend, and it looked like he was like dragging her at the car, and she's like yelling, and he's like pulling her kind of toward the woods area. And she's like, I don't know if I'm about to witness a murder. So she calls the police, and the police go and they talk, and they're just having like I don't know, a dispute or whatever. But they didn't end up doing anything because she didn't want to press charges. So if you just think that kind of that people, you call the police and what, they're gonna get shot, they're always gonna get called in, and they always want to just find some reason to throw people in jail. That is not reality. I don't know what world you live in, but it's not reality. People got to do paperwork and all this kind of stuff. Police do not just want to pull people in all the time. They just don't. They just don't. This is so far removed, and this is why I said this sort of training is ridiculous. Her view of the world is so skewed. You're saying you're sitting in a parking lot as a white woman, and something suspicious is happening. Something suspicious is happening, and you see a woman of color. I don't know what the suspicious is. I don't know her definition of suspicious. But let's assume you think something bad is about to happen. But you're like, you know what? I can't call the police because something bad might happen. And what if she's about to commit a crime? What if she's in the process of committing a crime, but you won't call the police? But you won't call the police because something bad might happen, because you're like, there's a certain possibility, like like you're pretty certain this will happen. What's your data, your background on that? Where's your evidence for such a strong belief of that happening? You know, I talked about this last week. The data analyst for Reuters, he was with them for 6 years. And he noticed that the company was very pro BLM. And so he started writing, he had all this data on them. He just realized that their message wasn't true, that there was no data to support to support that the police were just targeting Black people like this. And then he also got some data from like a Black economist from Harvard, who's a brilliant tenured professor, who came to the same conclusion that he had, even though he thought he would get a different conclusion. And as a matter of fact, when he found out he got his results, he like fired his team and like tried again. But turns out BLM is full of lies. And this mindset that liberals have, that the police are just always picking on Black folks like this, is just not true. It's just not true. I'm not saying people aren't discriminated against in certain areas or anything like that, or I'm not trying to discredit everybody's anecdotal evidence, but this sort of worldview that she has, that she's like, well, I can't, as a white woman, cause the police, and there's a suspicious Black lady, something bad's gonna happen. It's you are not helping society. You are a danger. This is the problem with white allies. You are now a danger. You are now a danger. And you think you're just a sweet history professor or teacher trying to teach all the white kids about racism. And you won't call the police because on someone apparently suspicious. Okay. Okay. That's crazy. But anyway, Reuters was mad at them, and he posted his findings in this hub for everyone to see, like in the company or whatever. And so people start freaking out. People are going in on him. He went to HR. HR got mad at him. They're like, you got to like get rid of this and stuff. And they ended up firing him. So he released his stuff, and we went through it. And you know what? It wasn't anything I hadn't heard before. It wasn't anything I hadn't heard before, but it was if you read it, it's a very, dense sort of article, because there's a lot of different findings there as he goes through it. And you're like, well, why are so many, we could say, well, the number of Black people who are shot, it should be more white people because there's more white people. And it's like, well, there's more Black people who commit violent crime. There's more white people who commit like crimes in general, who are like nonviolent. And we're like, well, that's because they're just picking on on black people. They go where the crime is, and that could be socioeconomic and all these other things. You could say there's all these domino effects, but if you just have this assumption that, like, man, I can't call the police because something bad will happen to the black people. And you know what? There's a lot of black people who are terrorized by other black people in their communities. So if you're just sitting there like and telling your over 300,000 followers, well, if you see a black woman, if you call the police, something will happen. And this is why Joe Biden has to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. Guys. And I took over 80 hours of diversity, equity, and inclusion training that's not grounded in reality, sweetheart. Not in the least bit. Not in the least, man. Let's see if there's anything else.
She might be called in for questioning. She might go to jail, right? That's institutional power. So until Biden says, I'm introducing a constitutional amendment that says that from here on out, only black women can be on the Supreme Court, like, we don't have a problem. White people, we're fine. We're totally fine.
So unless Joe Biden introduces a constitutional amendment that says I can be openly racist, it's not a problem if you're racist. Okay. That's ridiculous. And she said, and back to the if you call the police on the black woman, she could go in for questioning, she could be arrested. Did she do it or not? Like, because we established that the call is because of something suspicious, right? Or maybe she's assuming that white people are just calling police on black people just for funsies or whatever. But I assume that we're going with a scenario that you call because something suspicious is happening. So if something suspicious is happening and the police arrest them because they have cause or whatever, that's actually them doing their jobs. And you may consider that a bad thing, but if, like, how deep is this scenario going? Like, or is it just like we're looking at the amount of black people in jail and we're like, oh, it's bad. Well, like, did they do it or not? If they didn't do it, like, we need criminal justice reform and get them good lawyers and all the other stuff. But if they did it, that's a different issue. And this soft on crime, like, justice reform kind of stuff is the reason why we have a lot of crime going on right now, because people are trying to self-correct with this equity inclusion kind of ideology, and it's just causing more harm to a lot of black people in their communities. And that was another thing that the article from the data scientist who was fired from Reuters also analyzed, that we have more access crime and murders than we should normally be having right now because of the effects of BLM. But people, like, jumped onto it, marched with them and all this stuff. And now people don't even know where all the money is. They're being investigated for that. But I have shown this many times just to drive this point home, that the more left you are, the more wrong you are about police shooting statistics. And so in this, you can see how many unarmed black men were killed by police in 2019. About 10, about 100, about 1,000, about 10,000, more than 10,000. And you can see the more liberal you are, the more wrong you are about this topic. So the highest number in the very liberal, there's people who think the number is over 1,000. And the number is 13. At least the last I looked at it was 13. Because sometimes the numbers might adjust or whatever, because they're finishing out their cases and stuff. I believe the number is 13. It sure ain't 100, and it sure ain't 1,000, it sure ain't 10,000. There's people who believe that there's more. Almost 8% of very liberal people believe that more than 10,000 unarmed black people have been killed by police in 2019 in 1 year. And if you were that hysterical and you actually believe the police were killing more than 10,000 or 10,000 or even 1,000 black people a year, I can understand you being so hypersensitive about all this sort of thing. And just because you are unarmed doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a danger at all either. You just kind of have to look at this stuff on a case-by-case basis. But this sort of worldview, like, what if you call an institutional power example would be that if you call the police a black woman on a suspicious black woman, she might get arrested. And she's also assuming that if a suspicious white person will be let go and a suspicious black person might be arrested. And this was just like a wild sort of example, just going from, yeah, Joe Biden should totally elect appoint a black woman specifically, and it's reverse racism isn't real and all this other kind of stuff. So I just find all this stuff frustrating. I find it really frustrating. And again, I'm well aware that there's people out there. There's a movie called The Kid with Bruce Willis, and he's an image consultant. And there was someone at the very beginning of the film who did something like criminal or corrupt or something. So they called him. He's like, get a black kid, get 2 Asian kids, did a Hispanic kid or whatever. And then they like, I don't know, threw pie on him or something like that as like some kind of apology video. I can't remember the specifics of it, but there are people who do think in terms of race like that all the time. I'm not going to deny that is a factor in a lot of people's like staging, whether it's like politically or entertainment, stuff like that. But in the case, do you really think we're moving in a more progressive type of society when we are openly discriminating against other people to try to achieve some kind of end or correct some kind of wrong? The positive way forward in things and the true goal of what the civil rights and stuff should have been. But actually, if you adhere to like critical race theory, they don't believe in just creating a colorblind society. They believe that the world has basically kind of been corrupt and we need to sort of have this equity sort of way of thinking. It should be cool that this person is a qualified person and you know, it doesn't matter if they are black and white, but it's cool that she is a black woman. We can celebrate that because the country has come so far. That would be the correct way to look at it. But Joe Biden, and announcing it, man, making it known that he is pandering and he knows he's pandering and he's going to get away with that, I suppose. And that's, he's disgusting on so many different levels, just particularly him, not just particularly him, but particularly Biden. But our society should move to a point where people of all colors, shapes, and sizes and stuff are just succeeding because they're qualified and they're great. And we can still celebrate and see people's differences and just be so happy that our country has progressed in such a way. And we can go back and remember a time when people would have made this impossible because of their race and their gender. But we are making it impossible for certain people because of their race and their gender. If you are a man, and if you are Hispanic, and if you are Asian, and if you are white. So I told you guys that was crazy. I know I was pretty revved up. I was pretty revved up and ready to talk about that. So I'm glad I could talk to you guys about that video, which is crazy in my opinion. But she has a lot of followers, and reverse racism is real in the sense that it's just regular, good old fashioned racism. But that is a show for today. I thank you guys for watching. Please make sure you go to blacktnews.com and check out different content that I have on the website, different articles. Again, I've got some cool stuff that I'm working out for you guys right now that's going to be, add on to Black Tea News. You guys know I would like to see this be something like on the lines of like Daily Wire and all those guys like that, which they start somewhere, and we're going to get there as well. If you would like to support blacktnews.com, please go to blacktnews.com/donate and support there on the website. Anything you guys can do, I appreciate it. Make sure you guys are following me on all my social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Getter. All my handles are at Black Tea News. The only one that's different is Twitter, and that one is at True Black Tea, and that's also my backup TikTok account, FYI. Please check out different stuff that we have at the store, like this I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For. I got this Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt, which you guys can get that. I got a list of some of his racism on the back there, so go ahead and trigger a leftist today. Also got the cool goat hoodie as well, and I'm going to show you this cool Canadian like catching fire type of thing. Got here, Free Canada. Got the I got hoodies that have the Live Free on the side and some that don't. That one's a little less expensive, but guys, go check out the merchandise on the show on the website blacktnews.com. And also I am releasing a book on Valentine's Day. It is not political. It's a fiction romance paranormal book. It's called Anubis, Princess of the Damned. So you guys can check that out. If you go to blacktnews.com, hit the merchandise button, there is a banner that will take you to ninjadustpublishing.com. That's my website for my books. So I have that book. You can go pre-order it right now for Kindle for $2.99. It will be more, like after it's released. So go ahead and get that now. I'd really appreciate if you did. And you also can buy it and gift it to someone else if you know that they're into like young adult sort of novels. So go ahead and check that out. And also, since it is Black History Month, I will mention my book series, The Color of God's Eyes and Song on the Devil's Lips. If you like reading about books that take place during the Civil War, imagine like Civil War plus like X-Men kind of powers. So that's cool series you guys can check out as well. I love all my books. They're all my babies, but these are like hands down my favorite. So you guys can check that out. And you can go find all that at blacktnews.com. God bless you guys. And I will see you tomorrow.